And our man had to make it interesting for us with a big announcement over the weekend that I had no idea that was
I had
coming.
no idea either.
You didn't?
Apparently, Mr. Hendrick had a different idea. He and Kyle Larson and Cliff Daniels had an idea that they wanted me to practice their car at North Wilkesboro. So I would say that it would be practice and qualifying, but apparently there are some rules that don't allow me to qualify the car
Right.
from my eligibility. Apparently, you lose your AllStar eligibility pretty quick
when you retire.
Well, I mean, is that what happened? I don't know. I hadn't even gone back and read the rules. So, but anyway, I'm going to practice Kyle Larson's car while he is at Indianapolis Motor Speedway qualifying his Indy car. So, not very many scenarios that I would have said, you know what, that's a good idea. But this one, I was like, you know what, that's a good idea. And so I thought it would be fun. Mr. Hendrick called me and he said, hey. And I know when these conversations from him, when he doesn't call me all the time, but when he does call, there's usually something behind it. And our conversation started by, I need a favor. And I was like, all right, well, whatever you need. Because a lot of people don't understand how this sport works. And the people who are inside this sport understand that there's a lot of things that people within different teams and organizations do for one another when they're in a jam. So Rick's been very good to me through the years, was a huge part of the decision of going to Stewart-Haas Racing, because I felt at that time you had to have a Hendrick something in the equation to win a championship. And so Rick called and said, hey, I want you to drive the car. And I said, let me make a few phone calls. So I had to call my bosses here at Fox, and I had to call my wife.
Who was first, the bosses or Dwayna?
Well, I wanted to before I went to my wife, I was like, I need to make sure that everybody's good with this.
Yeah.
So I called everybody that I thought I needed to call, and then I called my wife and I was like, hey,
Hey.
are you sitting down? She's like, I'm driving. I said, well, maybe you should pull over. And she's like, oh man, this is obviously a pretty serious question that you're getting ready to ask me. I said, so about that retirement thing, I think I'm going to go drive. I didn't say that. I said, they've asked me to go drive Kyle Larson's car during the North Wilkesboro weekend. And she's like, okay, well, what'd you say? I said, yes, of course. Because I just, there's just not too many opportunities that are presented the way that this one was presented from Rick to say, I need a favor. And she's like, well, if Mr. Hendrick needs a favor, he's done us good. You should go do it. And I said, okay.
There you go.
It's time that's ever happened.
Yeah. That's so cool, though. Shortest retirement ever, but we're excited to see you back behind the wheel.
I mean, I'm still retired. It's just I'm technically just
helping
some friends out.
Helping some friends out.
And I'm excited to be a part of the equation, because I can't wait I hope Kyle Larson goes up there and qualifies on the pole and wins the race. And I just think that story of when Kurt Busch and Tony Stewart went and did the double, I think that was good for racing.
Yeah.
I think it's good for NASCAR. I think it's good for Kyle Larson. I think it's good for Hendrick Motorsports. The bigger platform that Kyle Larson is on that weekend and that week, really month, I guess, is good for everybody. So just glad to be a little part of the equation to help in some way, shape, or form. So it'll be a fun day.
Before we get into our regular schedule programming, we do need to talk about when you did come over to Stewart-Haas, right? You came over to Stewart-Haas. So now we weren't teammates with Hendrick at the time, Kaitlyn, but we were like aligned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of working together. How is it being, kind of quote unquote teammates with Jimmy?
Well, we had a lot of information at that particular time, and last week we talked about that Dover success, and we talked about what we were going to do. A lot of that started because we had that Hendrick relationship and the success that Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus and Jeff Gordon and so many of those cars had at Dover. You had immediate access to that. And that's where Rodney and I said, okay, let's start here. These guys have been pretty successful here. And you look back all the way back to 2013, the first time I tested the car. I can remember it like it was yesterday, because I just didn't know what the difference in the cars was going to be. And the first thing I got in and I made my first lap, and I'm like, oh my God, why is this engine so much quieter than everything that I've been driving? Why is it so much smoother? There's no vibration. And, I think we had them covered by like 3/4 of a second at the very first test. And I knew from there, I'm like, all right, this was a good decision. And so really before I started driving the Cup car, I had to have a sit down with Rick Rick obviously had a pretty big say in the approval process of who was going to drive that car. So he had to approve it. But I also wanted to run some Xfinity races. So I had to go sit in Rick's office and tell him what I wanted to do. And he said, we got done. And he's like, all right, we'll make that happen. And everything that we sat down with that day, he made happen with Junior Motorsports. And we went on to win a lot of races in a short amount of time in that car. And, won a lot of races in the Cup car too. So I just felt like, at that time, I felt like I needed to have a Hendrick something. So we had Hendrick cars, chassis, information sharing, and that was really the part of the equation that I was looking for the most in 2014.
That's cool. Full circle moments
Full
here.
circles.
Yeah. Well, we're excited to see you back out there.
Yeah,
Hope it goes well for you.
It'll be different.
Yeah.
It'll be different for sure. So
Speaking of full circles,
yeah,
full circles, you really
did a full circle
biffed
moment
2 weeks ago on the word of the week.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
did. You're right.
And you brought us right back. You lost us in the first half, but in the second half, you had us.
Hey, race fans, thanks for watching our video. For all NASCAR on Fox News, content, and the best clips from Fox Sports, be sure to follow and subscribe to our channel.